In the twilight realms where shadow meets eternity, where the living dare not tread and the dead find their final rest, there stands a figure both feared and revered. She is neither wholly alive nor completely dead, neither entirely beautiful nor utterly hideous. She is Hel, daughter of Chaos, ruler of the realm that bears her name, and one of the most complex deities in all of Norse mythology. Long before the Christian cross cast its shadow over the northern lands, the Vikings told tales of a goddess who commanded death itself. Born from the union of Trickster and Jontus, she would rise to become the sovereign of souls, the arbiter of afterlife, and the keeper of cosmic balance in a universe perpetually balanced on the edge of destruction. The story of Hel begins not with her birth, but with the ancient understanding that death is not an ending, but a transformation. In the cosmology of the Norse, 9 worlds existed, connected by the great world tree Yggdrasil. Among these realms, one stood apart as the destination for those who died neither gloriously in battle, nor cursed by the gods. This was Helheim, and its mistress would become one of the most formidable powers in all the 9 realms. But to understand Hel, we must first understand her lineage. For in Norse mythology, bloodline determines destiny. Her father was Loki, the shape-shifting god whose silver tongue and cunning mind made him both invaluable ally and dangerous enemy to the USIR. Loki was neither fully god nor giant, but something in between, a being of transformation and chaos who walked the line between creation and destruction. Her mother was Angerboda, whose name itself carries ominous meaning. She who brings grief or anguish boding. This Jontus dwelt in the dark forests of Jotunheim, practicing the ancient arts of cider magic and prophecy. From her union with Loki came 3 children who would shake the very foundations of the cosmos. Fenrir the Great Wolf, Jormungandr the World Serpent, and Hel herself. The prophecies surrounding these children were dire. The Norns, those ancient weavers of fate, had spoken of a time when these offspring would bring about Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods. Fenrir would devour Odin himself. Jormungandr would poison the sky with his dying breath, and Hel would open the gates of her realm, allowing the dishonored dead to march against the gods in the final battle. When the USIR learned of these prophecies, fear gripped their hearts. The Allfather Odin, wise in his knowledge of fate's inexorable march, knew that action must be taken. Yet in their attempt to prevent their doom, the gods would set in motion the very events they sought to avoid, a cruel irony that runs throughout Norse mythology like a thread of inevitability. The gods decided to separate the 3 siblings before they could grow into their prophesied roles. Fenrir was brought to Asgard under the pretense of fostering, though he would eventually be bound with unbreakable chains. Jormungandr was cast into the world ocean, where he would grow to encircle Midgard entirely. But for Hel, Odin devised a different fate. In her earliest years, Hel displayed the dual nature that would define her existence. Half of her body appeared as any beautiful young woman might fair of skin, bright of eye, with flowing hair that caught the light like spun gold. But the other half told a different story entirely. That side showed the ravages of death and decay, with flesh that was dark as shadow, skin that had the pallor of the grave, and features that spoke of the inevitability that awaits all living things. This physical manifestation of life and death was not seen as a curse by Hell herself, but rather as a representation of the fundamental duality of existence. She was both the promise of life and the certainty of death, the comfort of rest and the fear of the unknown, the end of suffering and the beginning of eternal mystery. When Odin looked upon the young Hel, he saw not just a child but a necessity. Death was a crucial part of the cosmic order, and someone needed to rule over those souls who died outside of battle. The Einherjar, those who fell gloriously in combat, would feast in Valhalla and prepare for Ragnarok. But what of the others, those who died of sickness, old age, accident, or in childbirth? They too needed a realm and a ruler. Thus, Odin made a decision that would echo through the ages. He would not imprison Hel as he had Fenrir, nor cast her out as he had Jormungandr. Instead, he would grant her dominion over one of the 9 realms. He gave her Helheim, also called simply Hel, the realm of the dead that lay beneath the roots of Yggdrasil in the cold northern direction. From the world of men, the realm that became Hel's domain was vast beyond mortal comprehension. It was a land of perpetual twilight, neither fully dark nor truly light, where the souls of the dead could find rest according to their deeds in life. The landscape itself reflected the dual nature of its mistress. Some regions were places of peace and comfort, while others held grim reminders of the wages of wickedness. At the heart of this realm stood Hel's great hall, Elgidna, which means sprayed with snowstorms or misery. The hall itself was magnificent in its own austere way, with walls that seemed to be built from the bones of ancient giants, and a roof thatched with sorrows. Here, Hel would hold court, receive the dead, and dispense the justice that would determine their eternal fate. The furnishings of her hall reflected both her royal status and her macabre domain. Her table was called hunger, and her knife was known as famine. Her bed was sickness, and her bed curtains were gleaming bale or shining misfortune. These names were not mere morbid decoration, but rather representations of the harsh realities that had brought many souls to her realm. Yet Hel was not a cruel ruler by nature. Those who came to her realm and had lived honorable lives, even if they had not died in battle, found comfort and peace in her domain. She provided a place of rest for those who had endured suffering, a sanctuary for those who had been cast aside by the living world, and dignity for those whose deaths had been mundane rather than heroic. Her servants reflected her dual nature as well. At her side stood the fierce hound Garm, whose howling could be heard across all 9 realms, warning of approaching doom. This great beast, with eyes like burning coals and fangs dripping with the blood of the guilty, served as both guardian and executioner in Hel's realm. The goddess also commanded an army of the dishonored dead, those who had broken oaths, committed murder, or betrayed their kin. These Draugr, or restless spirits, served as her enforcers in the realm of the dead, ensuring that justice was maintained even in the afterlife. They were terrible to behold, neither fully alive nor completely dead, existing in a state between being and non-being. But perhaps most telling of Hel's character was her treatment of those who sought her aid. Unlike many deities who demanded worship or sacrifice, Hel asked only for respect and recognition of her authority. She understood that death was not a punishment, but a natural transition. and she ruled accordingly, firm but fair, stern but not sadistic. The most famous tale of Hel's character comes from the story of Baldur's death. Baldur the Beautiful, son of Odin and Frigg, was beloved by all the gods and goddesses. His death, brought about by Loki's trickery, plunged all of Asgard into mourning. When his wife Nanna died of grief at his funeral and joined him in death, their journey led them to Hel's realm. Frigg, desperate to retrieve her beloved son, sent Hermod the messenger god to Hel's domain to plead for Baldur's return. The journey to Helheim was perilous beyond measure. Hermod rode Sleipnir, Odin's 8-legged horse, for 9 days and 9 nights through valleys so dark and deep that no light penetrated their depths. When Hermod finally reached the gates of Hel's realm, he found them guarded by Modgid, the maiden who kept the bridge over the river Jalabru. This bridge, made of gleaming gold and spanning the echoing river of the dead, could only be crossed by those who were truly dead or those with divine purpose. Recognizing Hermod's mission, Modgid allowed him passage, though she warned him that the living rarely returned from the realm beyond. In Eldjidna, Hermod found Baldur and Nanna seated in places of honor, for Hel recognized their virtue and nobility. When the messenger god explained his mission, Hel listened with the patience that only the eternal possess. She considered the request carefully, for it was unprecedented. Never before had someone sought to retrieve the dead from her domain. Finally, Hel spoke her terms. She would release Baldur, but only if every living and non-living thing in all the 9 realms wept for him. If even one creature refused to shed tears for the beautiful god, Baldur must remain in her realm forever. This was not cruelty, but rather a test of Baldur's true worth if he was indeed beloved by all. Then all would mourn his passing. The gods sent messengers throughout all the worlds, and everywhere they went, tears flowed freely. Men and women wept. Animals shed tears. Even the stones and trees and metals of the earth showed their sorrow through morning dew and frost. It seemed that Hel's condition would be met, and Baldur would be restored to life. But in a dark cave, they found an old Jontis named Thok, who refused to weep for Baldur. Let Hel keep what she has, the crone declared. Unknown to the gods, this was Loki in disguise, ensuring that his victim would remain dead. With this single refusal, Hel's condition was not met, and Baldur remained in her realm until Ragnarok. This tale reveals much about Hel's nature. She was not arbitrary in her decisions, nor was she motivated by spite or malice. She recognized that death was a serious matter, and that the boundary between life and death could not be crossed lightly. Her condition was fair. If Baldur was truly worthy of return, then all creation would mourn his loss. When that condition was not met, she honored her word, even though it meant keeping the beloved god in her realm. As the end times approached, Hel's role would become even more crucial. The prophecies spoke of Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods, when the forces of order and chaos would meet in final battle. In this cosmic confrontation, Hel would play a decisive role, not as a mere pawn of fate, but as an active participant in the reshaping of the world. When Ragnarok began, Hel would open the gates of her realm and march forth with an army of the dishonored dead. Leading them would be her father Loki, finally free from his torment. And beside them would sail the ship Naglfar, built from the fingernails and toenails of the dead, a vessel so vast it could carry all the forces of chaos. Yet even in this role as harbinger of the end times, Hell remained true to her nature as a keeper of balance. The destruction of Ragnarok was not an ending but a cleansing, a necessary death that would allow for rebirth, just as individual mortals died to make way for new life. So too must the old world perish so that a new and better one could emerge from its ashes. In the final battle, gods and giants, heroes and monsters, the living and the dead would all meet their fate. The sun would be devoured, the stars would fall from the sky, and the earth itself would be consumed by flames. But from this destruction would come renewal. A new earth would rise from the sea, green and beautiful, populated by the children of the old gods and inhabited by 2 human survivors who would repopulate the world. Hell's role in this cosmic drama was neither that of a villain nor a hero in the traditional sense, but rather that of a force of nature inexorable, necessary, and ultimately part of the divine plan. She represented the understanding that destruction and creation, life and death, joy and sorrow are all part of a greater whole. In the mythology of the Norse peoples, Hell embodied a sophisticated understanding of death that was neither purely fearful nor sentimentally hopeful. She represented the acknowledgement that death was a part of life, that it could not be avoided or bargained with, but that it could be faced with dignity and even found meaning within. Her realm was not a place of eternal punishment for the wicked, nor was it a paradise for the righteous. Instead, it was a reflection of the Norse understanding that the afterlife was complex, that it rewarded virtue and punished vice, but that it also recognized the simple humanity of those who lived ordinary lives and died ordinary deaths. The goddess Hel challenged the simple binary of good and evil, life and death, beautiful and ugly. In her dual nature, she embodied the Norse understanding that existence itself was complex and contradictory, that wisdom came from accepting these contradictions rather than trying to resolve them. As Christianity spread throughout Scandinavia, the figure of Hel would be transformed in the popular imagination. Her name would become associated with the Christian Hell, a place of eternal punishment and damnation. But this transformation obscured the more nuanced understanding that the original Norse mythology provided that death was not punishment, but transition, and that the ruler of the dead was not a demon, but a goddess. In the modern world, Hel's story continues to resonate with those who seek to understand death not as an enemy to be defeated, but as a natural part of existence to be accepted. Her dual nature speaks to the complexity of the human condition, the way that beauty and decay, creation and destruction, love and loss are all intertwined in the fabric of existence. The goddess Hel stands as one of the most complex and misunderstood figures in Norse mythology, neither fully alive nor entirely dead, neither completely beautiful nor utterly hideous, neither wholly benevolent nor purely malevolent. She embodied the contradictions and complexities that define existence itself. In her realm beneath the roots of Yggdrasil, she ruled not with cruelty, but with justice, not with arbitrary power, but with wisdom born of understanding. Her story reminds us that death is not the opposite of life, but a part of it, that endings enable beginnings, and that even in the darkest depths of the underworld, there can be found dignity, justice, and a strange kind of peace. In the Twilight Realm, where Hell holds dominion, the eternal questions of existence find their answer not in simple declarations, but in the acceptance of mystery itself. As the ancient Norse understood, Hell was not to be feared but respected, not avoided but acknowledged. For in the end, all roads lead to her realm, and in her dual nature half-living, half-dead we see reflected the fundamental truth that life and death are not enemies, but partners in the eternal dance of existence. The goddess Hell endures in our collective memory not as a figure of terror, but as a reminder of the dignity that can be found even in death, the justice that can exist even in the underworld, and the complex beauty that can emerge from a marriage of light and shadow, life and death, time and eternity. In her story, the Vikings found not just an explanation for what comes after death, but a philosophy for how to live with courage, honor, and acceptance of the great mystery that awaits us all.